happy today to you. I am William Brown from IamWilliamBrown.com, and this is One Word Conversations. Now, again, you know, it's a good thing that I say in the morning. I woke up this morning feeling certain ways. I guess the only way that I will stop saying that is when I don't wake up. So I guess I should be grateful that I that I get to say that. But really, these words and these conversations that we're having are really compelling me to wake up with intention. And so I woke up with heart on my mind, and that was good. And because my biggest challenge that I have is that distance between my heart and my head, you know, s- and sometimes the head wins out, or I don't know if the head wins, it just takes control. But in order for me to really give this conversation some justice, I have invited a dear friend of mine, um, that um, basically, if you look in the dictionary and see heart, you'll see her smiling face. So I am just going to bring my friend up, and good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing great. So before we get started, I really would love you to introduce yourself any way that feels comfortable to you.
Oh, okay. Hi. Hi, I'm Yvonne Ator. That's always kind of tricky, isn't it? Introduce yourself.
Yeah.
I am Yvonne Ator. I am currently a physician coach, facilitator, and advocate. I also coach the helpers, helping professionals. And I'm really passionate about helping the idealists, the do-gooders, the mission-driven individuals who want to make a difference thrive while making the difference in the world. And so I do a lot in terms of helping them get the skills or resources and everything they need to be able to serve sustainably and master themselves so that they can continue to show up and make the difference that they're here to make in the world. So that's kind of like a brief synopsis. But I'm also a
Great.
multi-passionate individual. I love music. I play, I write, and I play guitar and I write and I sing um, and yeah, that's about it. Not
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's about
lots
it.
of stuff happening behind the scenes, but that's a lot. That's about it.
That's a full
I'm a
life, right?
mom. I know. I'm a mom of two amazing girls. I have a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old. And we're homeschooling too in the middle of this pandemic. So yeah. I'm a mom too. That's right.
Right. And that's, and I when I first started this, and I wanted to invite my friends, I realized that there's a lot of my friends that are on the West Coast. Um and um and they are, you guys are very kind to carve off this time with me and have these conversations, because if
We
I
love
was
you.
doing this
That's
at
why we'll
seven.
wake up early for you.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. So when you think of the word heart, what comes to mind for you?
You were talking about how, like, your head always wins over your heart, and which I was laughing about because I find that very interesting. But when I think about heart, um like different words show up for me, like words like love and passion
Mhm.
and intensity and courage.
Mm,
There's it's like it's life, right? Like
mm,
for there to be life, there has to be that, at least in the human, there has to be that
right.
heart pumping, right? That pulse. So like when I think about heart, I think about like all that life is, like the pulse, the pain, the love, the all the emotions, like the full like emotional repertoire, the full emotional range
Right.
that we experience. So I feel like heart is kind of like life. It's like it's when you think about like joie de vivre, like the, that whole, like, the reason why we're alive, that the reason for being. So yeah, I think that heart is like the stuff of life.
Yeah, you know what? I get that, and so, but it's still hard for me to kind of give into my heart because I want to be logical and I want to be rational and all that other kind of stuff, and for me sometimes my heart occurs to me as this wild, passionate, crazy, all that other kind of stuff just all over the
Yeah.
place,
Oh, so see,
and
that's okay. I got you because I think
right,
that there's a lot of story around hearts too, right?
right, absolutely,
I used
absolutely,
to really like disown my own heart because I was like, I'm too much, I'm too intense,
right, right,
but like there are different kinds of heart. Like there's quiet heart. They're like the people who are
yeah,
like quiet and they're dogged in their determination.
right,
When you look at, I spent a couple of years like really immersing myself into like the military culture and the SEALs especially, and the people who were making it through the buds, which is like this several weeks of training, the most intense training on earth. The people
mhm,
who were making it through were not the people who were like the most buff or the loudest or like the who have trained the hardest. It was the people who had that mindset, who had that
right,
focus and determination and like and heart and the will. And so like heart is not always like this loud, like passionate and like dramatic.
right,
It can be that quiet, focused determination, like just unwilling to give up. And it can be
right,
very quiet. It can be they say, um, preach and when necessary, use words, right? So like your life
right,
can speak. I mean, you can really live a heartful life, a wholehearted life, without using words. And so like it's
right,
not this like dramatic. I think there's a lot of stories, and that's why I was laughing when you were talking about your head winning out. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if that's completely accurate because, like,
right,
yes, I mean, we have the rational sides and we all have the rational and the heart centered, but I don't think that they are mutually exclusive. Um,
right,
there's this quote that I heard. I think it's probably from Brene Brown because I'm certified in most of her work, all of her work.
right. That's
But
right.
there's something she said that I live by, which is like the journey from the head to the heart is through the hands, right?
Hmm,
So,
okay,
in order to go from that rational brain to like always like quote unquote thinking and being logical and all of that, for you to go from that to like the heart, which is whatever. And so you have to also define what heart means to you, right? Like
right,
heart might mean something completely different to me, from how you define heart, right? And so for you to go from head to heart, whatever that means to you, is through the hands,
right,
through practice, through showing up for the thing that is important to you, for showing up. It's by showing up for your why, showing up for your purpose, showing up for that thing that keeps you going. So when I think about
right,
heart, I always feel like heart for me is always tied very closely to purpose and why. And like there's that thing that keeps you going, that thing that makes you show up with determination, with your hair on fire. But again, that determination can be quiet. It can be this quiet resolution, right? And so I think checking the stories we have around heart, that word is so important. So from head to heart is through practice, through the hands, through showing up imperfectly,
right,
being vulnerable enough to
right,
show up and make mistakes and fail and try and try and try and try and try again and make a complete fool of yourself and try again, right?
right,
And let go of the stories that are not working for us around like what heart is.
right. No, I totally get that, and I think the reason why I feel that it wins is because within that story, it's like if I don't have care and compassion in my decision making, I'm, heartless or less heart, my less of my heart is in it. And so most of my decisions, or decisions that I want to make are based on that um, I guess the rational thought. When I was looking at, yesterday I kind of look at the word and kind of look for quotes and everything like that. And a quote um, that stood out, and I can't remember who it's from, but it said, "The heart is built to break,"
Ooh.
and it was like, wow, okay. And so it
Uh,
was, and it was like, for me, when it first got it, I was like, okay, that was a sense of encouragement. So it's like, even in the difficult times when I put my heart out there and I get stomped on or all that other kind of stuff, it was built to handle all of that. It was built to kind of do that, so I can survive. I can have life after those heart aches, or those those heart pains and things like that. And I was just like, okay, maybe is that why I'm more in my head than in my heart? But I'm not. But the heart can protect itself.
Oh yeah, it's so funny. I'm so glad you mentioned that. A few years ago, it's funny because when I was in med school, I have a previous life in medicine, but when I was in med school, I did cardiology rotation, and got to like see like a lot of like heart patients. And then a few years ago, when I did a stint at UCSD, like in their cardiology research department, and I got to like look at images of the heart for and study the heart for like a year and a half, 18 months, when I first moved to San Diego. And one of the things that always struck me about like those two times when I spent like intensely, for some reason, intensely studying the heart, which is so funny now when you look back on it.
Right.
But was the fact that like the research that I was participated in, helping look at the images of the heart. Like many times you'd see like people with like atherosclerosis, where you have like heart plaques, where you have like different plaques blocking the heart, right? And
Right.
the heart is so resilient that if one artery is blocked, like it will form like different like little like arteries, and like there'll be like little branches that will try to so when an artery is blocked, like the blood flow, right, is blocked, and that tissue can start to die, and that's how you have like heart attacks, right? But before you get to the complete blockage, like the heart will start like supplementing by like creating like different arteries, or there'll be like these different like tributaries and branches that start forming off of the main branch to provide
Wow.
supplies to the parts that are not getting reached. So like there'll be like for some people it'll be like all of these like different like branches that are forming, right, to try. So like the heart is so resilient that if anything happens, so let's say metaphorically, if something, you get traumatized, like in this part of your heart, like your heart is resilient and can form different branches to get what it needs. And so
Right.
I think, like thinking about the fact that we don't put ourselves out there because we're so afraid. We're so afraid that our hearts are going to be broken. We're going to be rejected. They're going to be made a
Right.
fool of, and all of that. Remembering that the heart is really resilient, right? Someone can die and you can put in some, put on some electricity and jump the heart. It's like, I mean, what other parts of the body can you do that to? It's such a resilient organ, right? You can like,
Yeah.
you know, recreate like different branches. You can like
Right.
attach one branch to the other. You can get, one artery from somewhere else and put it, it's like all of this stuff. It's so resilient. I think if we start thinking about the literal heart and using that as a metaphor for the metaphorical heart, right? And we can really start thinking about how resilient we are, and that we can go through different traumas, different
Right.
heartbreaks, different rejections, um, and we will we will bounce back. Now, will there be trauma? Will there be scar tissue? Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But right, but scar tissue in a way is like, there are a few things about scar tissue, right? There's the fact that the tissue is strongest where that scar is, right? You have like more tissue there and it's stronger and tougher. So and so yeah, so I think we really have to check the stories we have around our heart. We really have
Right.
to check the stories, even for those of us who are super intense, like we want to be more rational and more like, like calm and logical and you know, reasonable, and so we have our own story around like being like
Right.
passionate, and and then those of us who are like super rational and logical, and we want to be more, I have a lot of clients who for some reason I attract a lot of I don't know if you know anything about Myers-Briggs, but I attract a lot of
Yes.
INFJ males,
Right. Oh,
introverted males, who are so most of them are introverts, but a lot of them are feelers, but they want to be like, and they're feelers, but they're quiet feelers, right? So they feel deeply, but they're not out there, right? With the feelings, they're very reserved,
right.
and a lot of them will say, I want to be more like there. And I'm like, but who you are is you at your most powerful and most, and there's always that light bulb that comes up, like, oh yeah, like me as my purest and most authentic self, and I am my most powerful. When you think about like alcohol or anything, right? That
Right.
100% proof of that thing is that thing as it's at its purest form, its most concentrated form. That thing as itself is it as its most powerful and effective. So us as our most authentic, right? Most however we are, when we take away all of the contaminants, that all the stories that people have put in us or we've put in ourselves, right? When we take those out and we show up authentically as our true selves, we are at our most powerful. So we really have to
Right.
check those stories we have around heart. Um,
Yeah,
anyway.
no, I think that's great. I mean, it's like that the doctor is in the house, right? It is something that to understand that we're strong, but our heart is strong, but because it's important, it's a vital organ. It's vital
Yes.
to our life, right?
Yes.
So our tendency, or maybe this is from our head, is to protect the heart, to
Yes.
protect us, to protect. So within that protection, sometimes, and I think going back to Brene Brown, when we protect ourselves from bad, we also don't get the good, right, in our life, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So it's like being wholehearted, or being open, heart on the sleeve, all the things that we say will really allow us to be that authentic, full human being that we all, I think most of us want to be.
Yes.
But because, I don't know, the part of the brain that protects us, it's like, it's like, hey, it's like the heart's not going to protect itself. I got to do my, I got to do my
Yeah.
job.
That makes a
And
lot. Yeah.
so,
All of that fear. Yeah.
and just kind of get in the way. And so, there's a lot of talk around heart-centered, business owners or
Yes.
heart-centered people. How does that show up for you? I would say that you would probably fit under that label also.
um See, it's funny because I don't separate the heart from I feel like the heart and mind are connected, right? Like the heart. So there's a Bible verse that says, like, guard the heart because from it flows the wellspring of life. Like all of your life flows out of your heart, but what your heart does depends on what your mind is thinking, right? So I have to really guard, like I have to really be aware of what I'm thinking about
Right.
my heart, right? So if I'm thinking, yeah, so my heart will follow wherever my mind goes. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yep.
Um,
Got it.
but so I have to, you know, and so for me and business, first of all, I have to decide what heart centered means, right? And for me, the way that shows up for me, I mean, like all of my work, I guess, is heart centered because, again, it's about following my core values, which for me, heart centered looks like allowing love, allowing service to and compassion to guide
Mhm.
my business. So so those are metrics for me. Um
Right.
uh it's funny because people talk about heart centered work, and I've really like spent some time like reflecting on what that means, because again, it depends on how that person's defining the heart, right?
Right.
How one
Right.
person defines the heart doesn't necessarily mean how. I've seen some people doing heart-centered business. I'm like,
Right.
right. So for
I mean,
me,
for yeah, I think for me, and sorry to cut you off there. It's kind of all of my decisions, all of my offerings are coming from here, from from my center, from trying to understand that, and then to go out. It is not like I am going to think up this program, or
right,
something,
right,
and then serve it to you. But for me, it's like, is this offering, is this service, is this product coming from a place of love
love,
and service and gratitude? And I
yeah.
think for me, that's how my heart center grows up goes up, for me, and hopefully goes out and people feel that. But
Yeah, so that's what I
it
said.
kind of
Yeah,
gets,
yeah, that's what I said. So it's like, your heart, like for me, it would be love and service. And
right,
also for me, it looks like empathy and belonging. So I always say like for me, my purpose here, and I do it in different forms. My purpose here is to speak truth,
right,
catalyze empathy, and inspire hope, right? And create belonging. So it's like, so whatever I do, whether it's by writing or most of my work is through coaching, is making sure that I am coming from this place of holding space, like being creating empathy, catalyzing empathy for people, letting them know they're not alone, inspiring that hope,
right,
creating belonging. So all of that is very heart centered. But the reason why I was talking about like making sure that people are like, we all are saying heart centered, but we want to make sure that we define that, like we're clear,
right,
because different people define
absolutely,
it in different ways. Because there's also there's also like the conscious business. That's why I was trying to distinguish between the two, right?
gotcha,
Most people are, very conscious business, and there's that whole movement going on, and then there's the heart
right,
centered business. And so,
leadership, right, hmm,
yeah. So like for me, again, love, that compassion, that, sense of belonging, sense of connection, right?
right,
That service. And so, yeah, it's all very heart centered. But again, making sure that we're clear about what that means.
right,
And I keep going to that because, again, we can pay lip service to a lot of things and
right,
not really define it. And I think that's why sometimes in our rainbows and unicorn world, we get kind of mixed up and people are defining
right,
different things. And I
absolutely.
feel like we really have to be clear and hold people accountable. This is where my speaking truth is coming out now.
Okay,
To
hey,
hold people
there it is.
accountable for how they're defining what the heart means.
Right. um Now, no one's, and this is, I guess, this is what I say, that no one's truly heartless. Maybe
Exactly.
there are some actions, there are some decisions and choices that may have us questioning, if they're leading from their heart, or if they, or if they have an awareness of their heart. Um, but how how do you interact with with someone that um, is more, I guess, not leading from the heart, not their, their actions are not centered from that, and because we have to work with each other, and you
Yeah.
don't want to shame or blame people, but
Yeah. That's an excellent question, and something I think about a lot. Because again, us heart-centered people, we can go out there with our hearts wide open,
right,
and then realize, not everybody has the same values that we do. This is why I always talk about the thriving idealist, and starting to think about a lot about ideals and values and taking that word back. So we go out there with our hearts wide open, and then we think everybody has this, and that's why I keep talking about making sure we're on the same page about what we mean by heart. And there are other people who are
right,
like, oh, yeah, we're heart centered. And I've seen this a lot of times actually in our own heart centered personal development space. And this is why I'm being very, very, clear about this.
Right.
And we go out there and we think we're all like on the same page. And then you see somebody who's doing something that is not heart-centered, and it can be very hurtful for those who are heart-centered. And so
Right.
something that's really helped me is the concept of living big, which is from Rising Strong. And she talks about, and Rising Strong was written by Brene Brown, but she talks about living big, BIG, boundaries, integrity, generosity. What boundaries do I need in place so I can live in integrity with my values while assuming that that person is doing the best that they can? So
Right.
my values, integrity, my values. So we define the integrity as like, living your values, not merely professing them. Right.
Right.
And my values are connection, service, curiosity, creativity, and
Right.
authenticity / integrity. So for me, I want to be able to be, connected. I want to be of service. I want to be loving and compassionate and curious and creative, all of that stuff, all of that heart-centered stuff. Right.
Right.
And this person is being toxic or being not toxic, but like not being very heart-centered and
Not
kind of,
that, right?
not, no, not just doing the things. No, we're not doing the things they say they believe in, right? They're not living in alignment, but they're doing. But I'm assuming they're doing the best they can, because according to the data, that makes my life better when I assume that I am and other people are doing the best they can. So that person's doing the best they can. However, that person's kicking me in the face with their actions, right? And so I have to come back to, okay, these are my values. And in order for me to assume that person's doing the best they can, and this is where people stop. They're like, okay, they're doing the best they can, and I'm living my values. Therefore, I'll just allow this person to continue walking over me. They're doing the best they can. No, you need the boundaries. So for me, I'm going to have to sit with myself as I'm watching that person and go, okay, I want to be kind. I want to be compassionate. I want to be connected and blah, 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 blah in my own way. What boundaries do I need in place so I can do that while they're doing their whatever it is that they're doing? So I'm going to sit with myself and go, this is okay. This is not okay. This is acceptable. This is not acceptable. It's not okay for you to say you're heart-centered and then you're doing this. It's okay for you to do the best that you can, but it's not okay for you to do this. It's not okay for you to disrespect me. It's not okay for you to exploit me financially, right? Because we're all heart-centered and doing the same project, but I'm going to make money off of you. I'm going to make you do all the work. And then I'm going to take the profits, right? I see this all the time in the heart-centered space, right? Or I will take your work and not give you credit for it, right? Whatever it is that person's doing that is not an alignment or not heart-centered. So I will be very clear about the boundaries. What's okay, what's not okay, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And then I will communicate those boundaries, right? Now, it means, so for me, it looks like living big this way. And for me, it looks like having some hard clearing conversations, hard. And I'm an avoider, right? I'm working on it, but I tend to, even though I seem very like extroverted and like, very like bold, but like I'm an internal processor. I'm an internal feeler. So even though I seem very out there, when something really happens, I pull back. I need to process. I need to think about like, what am I really feeling exactly? Because as an empath, I can take things on. So I need to take a step back and go like, okay, what's my feeling and what am I picking up? Like what's actually in my heart and what am I picking up? And then, so take that space to like live big with this person, all right? And really communicate and have the hard conversation, get clear about what it is I want to say and have that clearing conversation. But really like set those boundaries, right? This is okay. This is not okay. Sometimes I might not have the power to do that or the bandwidth to do that. And it means like really giving myself permission to just take a step back and take care of myself. But I think a lot of times we get in trouble, especially in the heart-centered space, because we want to be loved. We want to be loved. We want to be accepted. We want to be the nice guy. And especially us heart-centered people, we want to be the nice guy. We want to be, we want to be loved. And it means a lot to us. And so we'll let people walk all over us
Right.
And this is part of why I do, where it's like I see the idealists, I see the mission-driven, heart-centered people exploited the most.
Right.
In the medical space, the helping space that I'm in, the helping professional space that I'm in, it's the heart-centered people, the compassionate people who will sacrifice to continue to serve and make that difference that are being exploited the most. So you have
Hmm.
admins and executives who are less heart-centered, let's put it that way, or say they're heart-centered, but not really. They're
In
more
a different
focused on
way,
the
right?
bottom line. Yeah, they're
Right.
more focused on the bottom line. So they're going to allow these people to work themselves to death because they know actually that this person is heart-centered and believes so much in the mission that they'll literally give their lives for it.
Right.
So
Wow.
these people will exploit them, and so we're seeing that, right? We're seeing that playing out in on right here in live in the world,
Right.
right? You're
Right.
seeing where people are literally working without protective equipment because they care so much about the patients, and they're asking for protective equipment, and the admins are firing them. I actually have people who are reaching out to me because they've gotten fired. They're gotten fired for asking for protective gear, and they're still showing up to care for the patients. They're still showing up to work. They're still working overtime, and
Right.
they're being exploited because the people know that this person is heart-centered and will continue to show up and will not abandon the mission, which is helping the patients or helping
Right.
people. So
Yeah.
we have to be clear about what the boundaries are, and we have to communicate them, and there have to be consequences and hold
Right.
people accountable for when they violate those boundaries, which is
Right. And
hard.
that is a hard word, exploited, and
Yeah,
you want to um think well of people, right? But sometimes when you're creating boundaries, you have to
hmm
say what it is. You have to say that, hey, this is I feel taken advantage of. I feel
yes,
exploited. I am going to be me and be out there, but there are some clear lines that need to
yeah,
be drawn here, not just for our interaction together, but my safety, my well-being,
yeah,
because I think that's when we get into we use language of, well, I don't care anymore. You just
yeah,
kind of throw up our hands and just kind of, I'm out. But we really don't want that. We don't believe that, but we have to do something to protect ourselves.
yeah,
And so I guess creating those boundaries, it like I said, it sounds good. It's one of those simple but not easy things that we have to
yeah,
do.
yeah. You can't have for you to have that open heart. You have to be able to have a strong back, right? For you to be able to
Hmm.
have the open heart, you have to be able to have like there's no compassion without boundaries. Compassion
Right.
without boundaries is codependency. Like, because then that person's needs are more important than yours, and that
Right.
does not that is not healthy. So a lot of us heart-centered people, we're like, okay, I'm gonna love the world, and I'm gonna heal everybody, and then it's like there's no boundaries, and you're just like giving and giving and giving, and then you're spent and you're burned out. And actually what you described, where it's like, okay, give up, that is the ultimate like disconnection between like what you say are your values, your professed values,
Right.
versus what is actually happening, your practiced values. So we go in
Right.
wanting to do this thing, this is important to us, but then what's actually happening on the ground is something completely different. Without those, right? Without being able to bridge that gap, um, that's where burnout lives. That's where the disconnection happens. That's where the compassion fatigue and just like complete disillusionment happens. So
Right.
it's important to be able to make sure that whatever values that you have, being able to not just say, oh, this is important to me, but also be able to live them. And it's hard to live them without being clear about what's okay and what's not okay, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Right. And so
Right.
like that's where the boundaries, again, it's not walls. We're not talking about walling off people. We're talking about having a fence with a gate, right? Where you can let the good things in and let the bad things out, and keep keep the good things in with the fence and keep the bad
Right.
things out with the fence, right? So like there's like an interaction, there's a negotiation, there's room for
Right.
growth,
It's like, yeah, you got to
and
go.
yeah, you gotta go. Peace out. Like,
Right. Come
hey,
on in. Right.
come on in. Yeah, you're helping me. You're good people, right?
Right.
We're not like
Right.
walled up from the world, and that's what a lot of
Right.
us like, especially when we first learn about boundaries. I know for me, it was like when I first read that boundaries book, I was like, okay, that's it. Everybody go out,
Right.
and it's not like that,
Just get out
It's
of here.
like,
I don't care where you go, right? Just get
just go.
everybody
I'm
out.
done. Everybody, I'm tired. I'm tired of everybody. That's it. You're
Oh,
gone.
oh
Right.
yeah.
But like being able to like sit down and go like, what do I want? What's important to me?
Right.
What am I building or what am I creating, and like what's important to me and how can I do this? What do I need that will support me, and what's no longer serving me, and having those. And it's not like a static thing, right?
Right.
In this season, like some things that were not okay in the previous season they're okay now, right?
Right.
It's like, before I would.
Right.
Sorry, you okay? Okay. Anyway, so making sure that we're kind of negotiating. So in one season, some boundaries might be okay. Like some things might be okay, some things might not be okay. I always liken it to this. So like, you have this might be a little graphic, but I'm a mom, so go with me here. So it's like, you have a child who's like, maybe 3 months, and the baby's pooping in a diaper and all that. And you're like, yeah, that's why we want with the baby to do that. And then the baby's like now 3, and you're trying to potty train, and they like the diaper more, and now it's 4, right?
Right.
And the you still want the no,
Right.
it's no longer okay to wear the diaper.
Right.
Like,
Right.
we've graduated from that. Right. So
Right.
it's like, with the universe, it's like some things that were okay for us to do when we're like more, when we're younger and more immature, like that's
Right.
okay. Like in this season, a lot of things that we're going to have to be okay with. Right. It's going to be okay to get more rest because you're processing so much. You're going through so much stress, right? You're just, there's so much going on in this pandemic. You're going to have to give yourself a lot of grace, right? That's okay. Right. And your heart is processing so much and feeling so much. That takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of emotional bandwidth to process all the stuff that's going on and still show up for your own life. Right. So some things are going to be okay in this season.
Right.
And some things are not going to be okay, like in terms of people coming and taking more of your time and all that. You need that time to like recover and process. And so, but when this season is over, there's going to be another season. So some of the things that were okay in this season are not going to be okay anymore. And that's okay.
Right.
And so having that self-compassion, with the word heart, directing the heart at yourself, right? All the things that we're wanting to do with others, making sure that we're doing with ourselves. So the compassion we're trying to do with others, being heart-centered with others. It's funny because a lot of us who are heart-centered with others can be very hard on ourselves. So being able to direct that compassion and that love and that passion and grace and gentleness and all of that stuff, making sure we're directing those at ourselves as well. Sorry, am I supposed to look at these questions?
Oh no. I just left. Oh no, I just left it up. The reason why this is family.
I didn't see it. I just realized that there were live comments. So sorry guys, I wasn't even.
Oh no, that's all right. I'm still getting used to it myself, and I'm in control of it, right? This weekend, the word was family, and we were talking about how family shows up and everything like that. And when you talk about heart and creating boundaries and protecting, yourself, this is family, Darlene. Thank you for being there. It is different because, as I say, with our family labels, they come with not just expectations, but they come with emotions. There's emotional ties with them. So creating, new boundaries or establishing boundaries with family members is tough because they knew you when, right? When you didn't have those, when you didn't have those boundaries, and they let you know that, hey, we liked when you didn't have those boundaries. So I believe that in order for our boundaries to be established, there has to be a level of agreement. And if there's not agreement to those boundaries, then there is an ushering through the gate, right? It's like,
Yeah, there is
it's
accountability, right?
right. It's
There
just
has to
like,
be
hey,
accountability. Mhm.
these are the new boundaries. Everybody that's okay with these can stay. You ain't, you can move on. And it may be family may be closer on the outside of the gate than others. Some may, go off into the wilderness, to use that, I guess, yard analogy there. But 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 they're not inside. If there's not an agreement and respect of the boundaries that are creating to protect you, um, that they're it's just going to have to move forward. Is there anything else that you can add to that, or disagree, or
So yeah, the thing is, like, we teach people how to treat us, right? And so, like,
right,
when we first establish boundaries, it's like, this is why I always say, if it was easy, everybody and their grandma will do it, right? It's
right,
like, so, like, when you first do it, it's like, it's jarring, right? People are used to treating you a certain way. And
right,
so when you first establish, most times you're going to have to establish these boundaries, like, quite a few times, especially if that relationship is important to you, right?
right,
Sometimes, um, sometimes it means taking a step back for a little bit, right? Taking a step back for a little bit, and allowing that person to kind of absorb the feelings or process the feelings of, like, what is how suddenly this person's setting boundaries with me, right? And so when you
right,
set the boundaries with that person, so again, we're always assuming that people are doing the best they can. People are not like, you know
right,
I always like to use sorry, I use a lot of metaphors, but I always like to use the analogy of like somebody walking into your gate and allowing the dog to poop in your yard, right?
hmm,
Like, people are not intentionally doing that. Most times people are allowing
I hope not,
their
right,
dog to poop in your yard because you
right,
don't have a fence around your yard, and they don't know where your yard starts and ends, right?
right,
So when you put the fence up, I always think about boundaries that way. When you put the fence up the yard and then put the gate in, you're right. You're saying, this is my territory. This is
right,
where this is okay. This is not okay. And, you can come in and visit, and here's some things that are acceptable for you to do. Some things are not acceptable for you to do, right? You can go out and do that, right? And
right,
so when we first put the fence around our yard, people were like, oh, I thought the fence, territory was closer to the house. You mean it's like farther out? Like, so it's gonna, for some people, it's gonna take a while to adjust. And so we
right,
have to be compassionate, like, and be understanding of them as they try to figure it out. Still stick
right,
with our boundaries, but then we also have to communicate the consequences of violating those boundaries.
right,
Like, so if I come and slap you on the face, like, what's the consequence of that? If you're just going to be like, oh, that's fine, like, okay, well, no big deal, right? But if you
right,
know that if you slap me on the face, you're going to face some consequences, as in the friendship is over, goodbye, right? Then I'll be
right,
less likely to do it. So people have to know the consequences, and you have to give them a chance to get retrained, right?
right,
So they're going to make mistakes a few times, and you have to give
right,
them the chance, if the relationship is important to you, to retrain. So
right,
most people think that, okay, here are the boundaries, and so goodbye, that's it. Like, we're human, and people, we have to train people, we have to teach people how to treat us, especially if
right,
that relationship is important. Now, if that person keeps doing it, right,
right,
and then you're dealing with something completely different, which is that
right,
person is not really caring about you, is not really, that person's not really empathetic, not really putting themselves in your shoes. They're just doing
right,
whatever, and that's kind of, psychopathic, right? And
yeah,
so being able to give people grace, and also
right,
give yourself grace. This is new to you
right,
too.
right,
And you're gonna
right,
mess up, and you're gonna be like very trigger happy in a way where it's like, don't mess with me, or else, it's like there's this thing
right.
that happens to the first one. So we're all going to be awkward with it in the beginning, and giving ourselves grace until we settle into the new relationship.
And I think for me, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think for me, the sometimes the disconnect is that, okay, I want to be tough, or I want to basically establish these things, but I want to do it in love. I want to do it from the heart. I want to not do it in anger. I don't want to demand, this. And So yeah, because I've noticed for myself that, when my boundaries are well, I'll just take ownership. When I don't set clear boundaries, and I think they're not respected because I don't set clear boundaries, or I kind of stay committed to them, I move into a level of resentment, and then resignation. And it's very hard to come back from resignation. you know if I just, yeah, what, throw my hands up, and this is how this person's going to be, this is how I just got to deal with it, and all that other kind of stuff. And then there's a level of suffering that I just feels like I choose to just live with, and that's just no way to live. And especially when you want your heart to be out there, you want to stay
Yeah.
present, you want to be all that. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think the boundaries are key to be heart centered. That's
Yes,
like,
and boundaries are key to being heart centered, because when you have the boundaries, then your heart feels free to be all the feelings, to be all the
right,
things that it wants to be. But the
right,
reason why we're kind of scared is that, right, we don't feel safe. We so putting ourselves in positions, again, vulnerability is always going to be like emotional risk. It's going to be risky. It's going to be emotional exposure and uncertainty. That's the definition of vulnerability, right?
right,
But we can we can create conditions to help us be more heart centered, right? By being clear about what's okay and what's not okay. And in order to do that, we have to be clear about our values, right? So for
right,
you, when you're talking about your boundaries, what was coming up for me was that you want to be able to communicate those boundaries. A lot of us think that when we're communicating boundaries, we want to just be like, hey, this is okay, it's not okay, blah, 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 right? But we want to do it in a way that's aligned for us, right? That is aligned for
right.
us in terms of our values and our strengths, being able to communicate. I do a lot of strengths work as well because I'm trained in positive psychology. We want to communicate our boundaries in a way that's aligned with our values, yes, but also with our strengths. Like for me, my number one strength is empathy. So I always want to make sure that when I'm communicating something that's hard, that I do it in a way that lets that person know that I understand where they're coming from. Like I'm
Right,
empathetic about it. So I will be
right,
intentional about being empathetic. For some people, someone else's strength might be kindness. They want to communicate in a way that's kind, or maybe in a way that's creative, or in the way is this
right.
joy, whatever is their strength, because then
Whatever's
they'll
your
be
strength in that area.
empowered, right? You're using
Right.
your strengths to empower you. So you want to do it, you want to communicate in a way that's authentic for you, that works for you, that's aligned for you.
Gotcha.
um so that's one thing. And then the other thing was the fact that you were saying, when you were talking about boundaries, oh yeah, so resentment, and which then leads to resignation. And whenever I start feeling resentful, there are a few questions that I ask myself, because usually resentment comes like after there's been some anger and all of that. And so being able to ask myself, okay, why am I resentful? And usually that means that for me, like with anger, like a need or an expectation has not been met, or a
Mhm.
boundary has been violated. So I check with those two. Okay, what need or expectation did I have that was not met?
Right.
Right. So I had a need for, I had a need for connection and security. Security is a big one for me. Safety is a big one for me. I had a need for safety and security. And this person just talked to me very carelessly about something that I confided with them about, and kind of
Right.
use it against me. Right. Just like,
Right.
um, then I'm feeling unsafe. Right. So I had that need for safety that person violated, right? Or there's this boundary, this thing that's okay and not okay. I've told this person that gossip is not okay with me, and they violated that by gossiping to me about somebody else, right? So
Right.
like I'll check in with so instead of stopping at the resentment and going, okay, I'm mad, or like, oh, I feel really resentful, going one step deeper underneath that and asking, like, what's the need that I have that was not met, right?
Right.
What's the expectation I had that was not met? What's the boundary that was violated? And then when we do that, then we kind of get we have a little bit more clarity and a more of a sense of agency to address it. Because sometimes, and that's more specific, because sometimes the problem is that it's kind of like the difference between conviction and condemnation, right? Or the difference between shame and guilt, whereas like shame is more general. It's like more identity based. Like, okay, when you're feeling resentful, it's like it's all general. Like you're suffering, like everything sucks, right? But when you go a step deeper into like, okay, what's the need that was not met here, or what's the boundary that was violated, right? It now becomes specific. Now it's like it's not that this person sucks and I'm a loser, I'm a pushover, right? And all of the generalizations, it becomes something specific that you can actually take aligned action about. But the suffering comes because like there's all of this story that all of the stories we're telling ourselves is more general, right? We have the pain, and then we have the pain, which is the actual pain of the incident, the actual thing happening. And then there's a suffering, which is like the story that we're telling ourselves about what has happened, right? And then which then prolongs the pain, right? So we want to get underneath all of that to like the specific needs or boundaries or expectations that were not met, or that were, right, the boundaries that were violated, which then gives you a sense of agency you can then take action about.
Right. And that can still come from the heart. That doesn't have to, as you know, using my language, come from the head, the logical thing. You know, you heard, you know, an eye for an eye type of thing. It is still within your values, within your convictions, and you can stand there and not move it into some logical way of dealing. You know, we can talk for hours about this.
And challenge you on that is that because you keep separating head and heart, and I don't see them as separate, because I'm a very cerebral. I mean, I can go to town with all the cerebral stuff. I do a lot of, and I will really invite you to like see them more as, or certainly think of them more as integrated, as one informing the other, right? So it's like, it's not, so when you're separating them, there's a disconnection there that I think you're an integrated being. You are a thinker and you are a feeler. Like everyone has a heart and a brain, right? There's no one walking around with just a heart and no brain, right? So they're both needed, right? And they both inform the other, right? The heart pumps blood to the brain, and the brain sends messages to the heart telling it to pump, you know, faster or whatever, depending on what's going on physiologically in the body. And thinking about that metaphorically, which is that your brain and your heart are connected, and practicing that connection where instead of discounting the mental over the brain, or the logical over the heart, bringing them both as like the left hand and the right hand, right? Bringing them together. And so that's my challenge to you, like seeing them as not one over the other or disconnected, but more like starting to think about them more as like an integration, like the heart informing the mind and the mind informing the heart.
You know, I will definitely take that on. That's what disconnect is to connect is all about. It is disconnect from a way of thinking, a way of being, and to try on something new. And so I can definitely do that. And so I'll just connect them all together and be integrated.
You're enough as the thinker you are. You're enough. Like we need people who are more rational and who also have that desire to be more heart-centered. But from the head to the heart is through creativity, and that's what you're doing, right? You're practicing. You're using your creativity. You're having these conversations, and by doing that, you're becoming more integrated in terms of heart, mind, heart. So
I received that. Now Linda has the you know, a question. Is there any recommendations for any videos or any reading on, you know, being heart-centered or heart or boundary?
I mean, Brené Brown's work is really powerful for that. I also Heartwork. I like Danielle Laporte's stuff with heart in terms of the heart. She's a little bit more esoteric, but I don't know. I don't really heart books. Yeah, I really like Brene Brown's work for heart stuff because it's all about wholehearted living. And, when she talks about the guideposts for wholehearted living, I think that's a great place to start. The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly. I also, trying to think of something else that might be
Okay,
helpful.
and I can put it in the notes
Yeah, I can
on the
give you some
video.
more
We can do it in the
resources later. Yeah.
chat. And so no, so that's a great thing. And so Ron, has has said that hey, there's people that think
Yeah.
from either place, but it's still an integration.
Yes. Yes.
From
And the
so
practice is about the integration, not
right,
doing one over the other.
it
Because
it's
us
just staying
heart-centered people also need the rational as well, right? We also need that, so for us, integration will be leaning more to the rational, right? And for the more rational, logical people, integration will be leaning more to the heart. But I think you need all of it. The goal here is to be an integrated warrior, to master yourself mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, intuitionally, so that you're showing up in all of these arenas as a wholehearted, fully integrated being, because you need all of those different intelligences for different things.
absolutely. So we're going to be wrapping up our conversation here. I have your website up so people can connect with you. Is there any final thing that you would like to say so you can, I guess, I don't know, get back to homeschooling or or something?
I think and this is something I've been thinking about a lot in this season, and just like a lot of us want to, it's a pandemic and it's a hard time, and everyone want to fix everything and make yourself more productive, and like, okay, this is a time I need to go and be more productive, and rah rah rah. And what I want to say to everyone is just like, be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself. You're doing the best you can in this minute. These are challenging times, and you will come through this. But as you're doing it, the way to keep taking action is by continuing to cheer yourself on, continuing to be kind to yourself, continuing to be generous with yourself, and be gentle with yourself. Right? This is not the time for you to bash yourself and like blame yourself and beat yourself up for not being as productive or as whatever as you like. You're enough. Where you are, you're enough. Now just keep showing up, and keep doing the best you can, and just keep showing up and doing whatever you can in the situation. So be kind to yourselves, be gentle with yourselves. You're doing the best you can. Just keep showing up. That's and yeah, and just have some grace for yourself, and have some grace for others. Right? We're all in this together, and be kind and gentle to yourselves, and treat yourselves like someone you love.
Okay, well, that's great. Well,
That's a
thank
very
you
hard
very
thing to
much.
say. I just realized
I know
that.
that's what you put your heart out there, right? But we have a
Yes.
moment to stay in the green room, and
Sure, sure.
I will talk about it. But thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Sending you guys lots of love.
Wow, that was great. I am so glad to have this conversation, and I will work harder to continue the practice of integration between my head and my heart, and just allow it to lead me to show up. I think the one thing that I got, from this conversation is just, be you. Just, just um, s- speak your desires, share your desires, and just live them. And the world will reward you. I don't know if that's the word, but that's the word that came out right now. So um, the world wants you, the world needs you, and the world is waiting for you. So go be you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.